right, hey, welcome, ladies and gentlemen, and that's the way it was last year as the Baltimore Ravens won the Super Bowl. I'm Charles E. Smith Jr. Welcome to the inaugural edition of Football Talk, which is, of course, an Inside Sports production. But I don't do this show alone. Of course, I enlist only the best talent here. Tonight, we're going to do our AFC preview show. The season gets underway this week. We'll let you know what's happening, the good, the bad, the ugly, the contenders, the pretenders, and all that other type of stuff. So without further ado, let me go ahead and bring in my very esteemed colleague here, none other than Chris Lardieri. Some of you follow him on Twitter at Chris L Sports. But hey, always got plenty of things to say. Mr. Lardieri, what's happening?
Charles, it's great to be back for a second season. I know it was a little touching with the contract negotiations, but given the state of the economy, at 10% on top of zero, I'll take it. So thank you.
All right. Fantastic. So about ready to break down the AFC here. And, of course, we were going to do it last week, but I had a little bit of a, problem with some oral surgery and whatnot. But now we're ready to go. So, first of all, let's go ahead and pay homage to the champs here. So the Baltimore Ravens, of course, they won Super Bowl 47. And let's go ahead and let's talk about the Ravens, all the players they lost. Of course, Ray Lewis retired. They've lost, Anquan Bolden is gone. Ed Reed is gone off the defense there. What about the Ravens? Everyone wants to know, simply, will the Ravens be okay? Before we get into breaking down the individual divisions here, how about the Ravens?
The Ravens, as an organization, kind of have that Steelers model where they always seem to reload and other players. I know they signed Elvis Dumervil, formerly of the Broncos, this year to try and sturdy up the defensive side of the ball. But I just think they've lost so many players, and with the fact that Flacco got a huge contract that's going to eat up so much of the cap, might take a little bit of time for them to reload there. So while I think they could still contend in the AFC North, I think it's going to be difficult. And two guys I think they're really going to miss. One you mentioned was Anquan Bolden, who had an outstanding postseason and really made some clutch catches, especially against Denver and in the Super Bowl against the 49ers. They're going to miss him. And they're going to miss their tight end, Dennis Pitta, who got hurt in training camp and is done for the year. Flacco likes looking for the tight end as the season went on. He really looked at him a lot, and I think that's going to be another thing. You'll see defense is key more on Ray Rice, and it's going to be a matter of who Flacco can throw to. Does Torrey Smith scare you? Not necessarily. So I think this is it's hard for a champion to repeat. I think the Ravens have a little more of an uphill battle this season.
Okay, well, when I look at the Ravens, offhand, when I look at it, it does seem like you look at those pieces that they lost and all of the anchors, especially on defense. I always talk about the anchors. They got Nata up front, then they had, Ray Lewis with the linebackers, then you got Ed Reed anchoring the backfield. But when I look at what they've added, though, Elvis Dumervil gives them a pass rushing option they didn't have last year and another element. T. Sizzle, Terrell Suggs will be back. And then on offense, they did pick up Dallas Clark, tight end Dallas Clark, who got a ring with Indianapolis, as did Brandon Stokely. They got both of them. So they'll both be there. So I think that when you look at that, neither of them may be as explosive as Anquan Bolden. But when you look at that, maybe they've done enough to just plug those holes up a little bit. Plus, their entire, their offensive line is going to be back as well.
Yeah, there are still a lot of pieces to the puzzle still intact. I just think in general the ones they've lost have also given them tangible quality of leadership, namely Ray Lewis and Ed Reed. And I know Flacco gets paid like an elite quarterback. Well, let's see if he can lead this team now, because the torch has been clearly passed to he and Ray Rice in the locker room.
All right, well, let's go ahead and stay there in the AFC South, and we'll get over to the other team, which we think would be contending for that division title maybe, although a lot of people are high on the Bengals. But Pittsburgh, we gotta look at what is the problem in Pittsburgh. And when I look at this, the Tim Tebow, his one fantastic season he had in 2011 with the Tebow mania and everything, and it concludes with that, before they lost, of course, that great overtime game against the Steelers. And when we look at it, though, and looking at what the Steelers did last year, Tebow beating them in the playoffs may have been more indicative of the Steelers defense going into a state of kind of disarray, even though they were ranked at the top last season. But that was not Steelers football they were playing on defense last year, and the offense was kind of helter-skelter as well. Talk to me about the Steelers a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, they were just decimated by injuries last year. But they couldn't keep Palomalu on the field. Ryan Clark having issues. I think that didn't help. The one thing I think got going for them this year is they can't possibly be as beaten up and lose as many man games to injuries as they did. I think last year was a disappointment, and I don't think Mike Tomlin's the type of coach who will tolerate it. He's a guy who reminds me a lot of a Belichick or a Coughlin, and I really can't see him putting up with two mediocre seasons, especially on the defensive side of the ball. So I think the schedule will be a little easier, a little more favorable. If they can get the offensive line intact, which is another area that was banged up last year, and keep Big Ben on the field and not on his back, I mean, the Steelers are very viable contenders in a division where you may not necessarily have to go 12-4 to be champion.
And you know what? Let's go ahead and talking about that division. A lot of words being said about the Cincinnati Bengals. What about them? Are there a legitimate chance? Do they have a shot to actually? They made the playoffs last year, but are they good? Can they win this division?
They could. I'd love to pick them, but after all, they're the Bengals, and I know Hard Knocks is fairly compelling. Geno Atkins, who really you saw the Bengals love, got a big contract today.
Right.
Big Harrison, who clearly doesn't like cameras. Kind of the maturation of Andy Dalton, and maybe some more people are finally starting to see that A.J. Green's a big-time receiver. The pieces are there. However, I mean, this is a team that's made the playoffs the last 2 years and lost to a very unimpressive Houston Texan team both times. So could they win the division? Sure. But not quite sold on them. I mean, who's going to run the ball for them? Will the defense hold up? They've got a more difficult schedule this year. We shall see. I think a lot of it is going to depend on how Andy Dalton plays as well.
All right, most definitely. So before we move on to the AFC South and those Houston Texans, let's go ahead and how about the division picks here? Who have you got for the AFC North?
I'm going to go with the Steelers. I think they rebound. I think they'll be healthier. And like I said, you've got to have a Patriots-like record to run away with the division. I mean, I could easily see a team being 9-7 and running away with it. I think the Bengals and Ravens will be there too. It'll probably be pretty close. The Browns, again, an afterthought as they've changed coaches and cleaned out the front office yet again. But I think the Steelers squeak it out.
Yeah, and the Cleveland Browns still one of the few teams in the league which can actually rebuild without ever having built anything in the first place. And again, they are rebuilding. So I'm going to go with you with that too. I like the Steelers to rebound, and really disappointing loss in the playoffs a couple years ago, disappointing season last year, missing the playoffs, and I think they're going to come back. But I do like the Ravens to be strong, though, so I'm in no way discounting the Ravens. I like what they've done and the way they've plugged those holes. I really think burdened with that contract of Flacco, I think they did a great job of retooling, and they're definitely going to be in that mix.
Absolutely.
All right, let's go ahead and move over to that AFC South. And there you have the Houston Texans. And, this is one of the more, I don't know, how do you call it, fragile? I know J.J. Swat would not like to hear that. But when I look at them, they are one of the more fragile elite teams. It just seems like something, if one little thing goes wrong, that whole house of cards could come down. I mean, is Matt Schaub as good as advertised? Is Arian Foster truly an elite back who can carry the load and get the yards when they really need to? And Andre Johnson, can he really stay healthy and get it done when he really needs to as well? But I think it's going to come down to, the Texans and the Colts. And also, was Andrew Luck lucky last year? Let's talk to me about that AFC South a little bit.
You know what? I agree with you. The Houston Texans are one of those teams that they played in another division. They'd probably be lucky to be a wild card team. That said, with all the questions you outlined so eloquently, you can add to that Gary Kubiak. This will be the second year in a row. It'll be the third year in a row where they could be facing wild card win and going out. I mean, they've got to get to an AFC title, I think, or they might clean house as well. And I think Schaub, Foster, and Johnson all have to improve. So I'm still picking them to win the division, although they're not very impressive. But I think the Colts gave them a run for their money last year. But I think given the schedule and the fact that they've still got an excellent defense, I think they could easily win the South.
All right, and then, well, when you look at the Colts, and then the other thing is you look at the strength of the division, as a whole. You got the Jaguars in there. I don't think anyone's picking Jacksonville to do a whole lot of anything. And then you've got the Tennessee Titans. Are you picking CJ 2K to return to 2K form and put the Titans over the top and into the playoffs, or what?
No, I will not, for a number of reasons. We talked at length last year about how he got his contract and only seems to turn it on when he feels like it, with his points last year when the games or seasons seem to be out of reach. I just don't trust Jake Locker there right now. Matt Hasselbeck's a nice backup, but he's not getting any younger. The money you're paying Locker, you really want him to play and develop. And Mike Munchak could very well be one of the first coaches on the proverbial hot seat. So I'm really not expecting the Titans to be a player. The Jaguars are years away. I think they've turned things around in terms of getting in a new GM and coach. I think they're years away. And is Blaine Gabbert the answer down there? Probably not. With the Colts, I think they could contend. Mm-hmm. But one thing that people aren't really talking about, I mean, it's great that Chuck Pagano's back. Great story, to recover from cancer like that. But Bruce Arians coached that team, and he's now the head coach in Arizona.
Right.
So what I'm wondering is how Andrew Luck will relate. I know his new offensive coordinator was with him at Stanford, but a little bit of a different system. You worry about the sophomore jinx and another year of tape for other teams to learn how to scheme against him in games. I don't think it's going to be as easy. So I think that the Colts come back down to earth a little bit.
All right. So at the end of the day, we know you're not picking the Jaguars, not picking the Texans. So will it be? I mean, you're not picking the Jaguars or the Titans, rather. So will it be the Colts or the Texans?
I'm going to play with the chalk. I'll pick the Texans again. I think J.J. Watt and company there on defense, they're just too deep, and they could get into a bunch of 21-10 type games, 21-14 games where we'll just run the ball down your throat and hope Schaub doesn't make mistakes and easily get to 10, 11 wins it may take to win that division.
Right, and also they got, Ed Reed. Granted, he's not the Ed Reed of 5 years ago or even the Ed Reed of last year, probably, but got him on defense there, too, to maybe anchor those boys a little bit as well in the defensive backfield.
Yeah, he's got intangibles, like I said, with the locker room. It's probably like having a second defensive coordinator on the field there, so it'll definitely give him some leadership and some additional brains to tap into.
Yeah, and it's not going to be, like I said, I'm not completely sold on the Texans as a championship football team either, but I do think they're going to win the division as well. I'm sure if we keep picking divisions, we're going to get to one that we disagree about at some point. So let's go ahead and go to the AFC West now. And, of course, talking about the Denver Broncos who peeled off all those wins last season, only to get dumped in the first round, the first playoff game, of course, because, we know Peyton Manning can't play in the snow. So maybe they want to throw a few games during the regular season to get him into a dome in the playoffs. I don't know. But big news is, of course, Wes Welker going to Denver. And, do you think the Manning to Welker thing will work just as well in Denver as Brady and Welker worked in Foxborough?
Absolutely. I mean, you look at the receivers around Manning last year. Look at Demaryius Thomas, who really blossomed. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And I think he'll be perfect. I mean, and for Welker, I don't think it'll be a big adjustment going from Brady to Manning. I mean, those are two of the top, if not the.
It's like going from a Cadillac or from a Rolls Royce to a Bentley, right? Something like that. I mean. Yeah.
I mean, probably different interior, a little bit different engine, but still ultimately a pretty expensive car.
Yeah.
And so I think it can only help, and you go back, you mentioned him earlier, to the Brandon Stokely days. Manning loves those style receivers like Welker plays. I mean, you could see him going underneath and over the middle, easily getting 10 to 12 catches a game in that system. So that'll definitely help the Broncos. The problem with them is the other side of the ball. They've lost Doomerville. They got Von Miller suspended due to PEDs. Who's going to wreck the passer? And I know they've kind of tinkered with the secondary. They brought in Quentin Jarrett from the Chargers. They've been happy with him. But you can't get a pass rush. I mean, unless you Deion Sanders back there, teams are going to throw on you.
Yeah, that's the other thing. And I believe they have Cromartie back there on defense also. Antonio Cromartie, yeah. So when you look at Antonio Cromartie and Champ Bailey at the corners, that looks, on paper, that looks like a pretty good corner tandem. But we look at a couple of things, and Cromartie is not that big. He's not that really, not a hard-hitting corner. And Champ Bailey has still had those foot problems. Not to mention, even with Doomerville and Miller in that playoff game, Champ Bailey got toasted by Torrey Smith in those playoffs last year. I mean, toasted. He got beat clean 3 times. Flacco hit him twice for touchdowns, and the other one he overthrew him. But Bailey got toasted. He's always been kind of a one-on-one cover corner.
Yeah, definitely not as fast as he used to be. He's not the same Bailey. So, yeah, I mean, I think, like you said, the holes were exposed last January against the Ravens, and I think they're only going to be worse. Now, on the bright side, the Broncos play in the AFC West. So kind of like the Texans, I think they got some time to work out their flaws, and they won't have to worry about kind of being on the outside looking in up at, say, the likes of the Chargers or the Raiders. I don't think there are going to be any threats to them for the title.
Right, and you could say the Denver's going to have to score 35 points to win every game, and well, the best part is with Manning and Welker and Decker and Demaryius Thomas, they probably can score 35 points a game.
Yeah, it'll be like the good old days of AFC West football with Dan Fouts lighting it up and so forth. So, yeah, I mean, you look a few years ago, the New Orleans Saints won a Super Bowl with a high-powered, high-octane Drew Brees-led offense and nothing spectacular defense, just enough to get the job done, bend but don't break. So, yeah, I think that's they're just lucky they don't play in a tougher division ultimately.
Yeah, so, what, let's talk about that other, you mentioned Dan Fouts, and here we have a new era of Chargers. What exactly is happening in San Diego? I mean, you got Phillip Rivers, who's been really kind of mediocre the last couple of years. Denario Alexander, one of their great receivers, young receivers, he's out all season now with a torn ACL. So that leaves him with Malcolm Floyd there. Is this kind of the last stand here for the Chargers, or what?
I think so. You got a new coach in, Mike McCoy, GM. I think that if they have another mediocre or sub-500 season, they may tear the thing out and try and build it up in their own mold. The Chargers have had an unbelievably bad luck this season with wide receivers in training camp getting hurt, and to rely on someone like Robert Meacham is not a good sign. On top of that, the Chargers' offensive line has been a problem the last few years,
right.
And the 2 tackles I saw today are King Dunlap, who's been just mediocre at best at left tackle, and they got the Alabama rookie DJ Fluker on the right side. So, yeah, he's got 2 big bookend tackles, but neither of them are very experienced, so I don't see things getting any easier. And Ryan Matthews, jury's still out on him. Guy's got a lot of potential, runs well when he plays, but he just can't seem to stay healthy. So I feel like it could be another long year for Rivers. If they go 8-8, I think that might be a pretty good coaching job by McCoy. And on the defensive side of the ball, Manti Te'o's coming in, very heralded, but he's already been banged up. They've always had problems in the secondary, other than Eric Weddle. Can't even rush the passer. So a lot of holes there. And like you said, I think not necessarily Rivers' last stand, but maybe the team in this form might just be completely rolled out, and you might see a whole new slew of people on the field next year in San Diego.
Yep, and I also got to mention the Kansas City Chiefs. I keep hearing them. The name keeps popping up. Jamal Charles, which I think averaged over 5 yards a carry. But I see smoke and mirrors. Honestly, when I see Jamal Charles, I see smoke and mirrors. I think smoke and mirrors. Are the Kansas City Chiefs any type of a threat? Andy Reid, of course, coming over from from Philadelphia. Maybe he can turn things around there. But what about the Chiefs?
You know what? I'm pretty optimistic about the Chiefs. They'd be one of my dark horse teams. Now, I don't necessarily think they're going to win the division or pull a Colts and come within a game of winning it, but I think Reed needed a change of scenery. Everything I've read and seen, they're very happy with him there. Dwayne Bowe's happy again. He's got Alex Smith there. And, Alex Smith, very much maligned in San Francisco, lost the job to Colin Kaepernick, which ended up being the right decision by Jim Harbaugh. But at the time, he had a tremendous completion percentage, was statistically playing pretty well, although they were calling for it 2 weeks before. But in Kansas City, he's going to be a big upgrade at quarterback. He knows the system that Andy Reid runs. If Charles can stay healthy, I think he's got a viable running back option in the backfield as well. And they've got some players on defense. So, given the division and the fact that they were so bad last year, I could see the Chiefs improving a lot now. Are they going to contend? Probably not. But you never know. They could sneak up and beat some teams that they shouldn't. And Andy Reid just happened to coach in Philadelphia with a brutal media and fan base. So I think he'll do a good job in Kansas City, and I think the fans will be a little more welcoming and appreciative of him.
All right. Well, I think we can agree that we're picking Denver to win the division.
Yes.
All right. So let's go ahead and move on to the.
Wait, Charles. We got to talk about the Raiders. Come on.
Oh, the Raiders. That's right.
A lot of friends who are Raiders fans. Let's talk about them.
Hey, Terrell Pryor. Terrell Pryor is going to be the starting quarterback for the Raiders.
Right.
And in week 1 there. So what about the Raiders?
Yeah. They're going to be a contender for the top pick in the NFL draft. I think it'll be a team we'll talk about in a few minutes. So I didn't want to slight my friends that are Raider fans, my father. I did want to mention, it's good for Terrell Pryor. Matt Flynn ended up there. It could be this year's version of Kevin Kolb, where got a bunch of big money based on one game. He's not healthy. I mean, they got so many holes on both sides of the ball. Darren McFadden never stay healthy. They're just. I would not want to be Reggie McKenzie right now.
Well, the thing about Matt Flynn is, he got all that money off of the big start. We talked about that Rob Johnson effect. He was the first quarterback to actually fall into that. But Matt Flynn, he can't even make it through training camp. The tendonitis problem is the same thing that plagued him last year when he was in camp with Seattle. Now, even if he did get a starting job, you think a guy who can't even make it out of training camp is really going to play 16 games for you?
No, not in front of that offensive line, that's for sure.
Okay.
Yeah, I just figured we mentioned the Raiders. We'd be fair and talk about every team. Now we can move along. Thank you.
Okay, all right. And you know what? I meant to mention the Raiders. I was just looking at the clock and looking at the next division and trying to fit things in here. So I didn't mean to diss any Raider fans, and you got to give it up for Raider fans because they are some of the most loyal in the world, though nobody on the planet understands Raider fans except for Raider fans themselves.
Absolutely, and I respect them. Sure. I said, a lot of my fans and readers and so forth are Raiders fans, so I did not want to slight you. However, if this were Dallas Cowboys, I would have let you overlook it in the interest of time. Thank you.
We're going to pound on Romo tomorrow night, but now we're in the
AFC.
AFC.
I can't wait. Yes.
Okay, so AFC East. The reigning, it seems, the New England Patriots, they have owned this division, but when we look at everything that's gone on, Aaron Hernandez is probably going to prison for a long, long time. Gronkowski is on the roster. He's not on the physically unable to perform, although he probably will not be in a game until probably week 3. But nobody can name any of Brady's receivers. Who's their running back? Is this going to be Brady's toughest season? As far as all the amount of adjustments he's going to have to make, because it was Wes Welker and he for a long time. Now Welker is gone. But Brady, I think he's going to really have to channel his inner Tom Brady to get through this season.
Yeah, definitely. I think it will be a challenge. I think Danny Amendola, they got from the Rams to replace Welker, if he stays healthy, is poised to have a big year in that Welker role. And, you hear a lot of good things coming out of Foxborough about him, so that'll help. And Gronk coming back in a few weeks.
Right.
Is Stephen Ridley a legit running back? I don't know, but
yeah.
You know what? You can never count out Brady and Belichick, and Kind of this recurring theme we talked about with some of the other divisions. They really aren't. I really don't think they're a viable contender, so they can skate by and still win that division. Now, are they a legitimate Super Bowl threat? Not as they're constituted right now, but I really don't see anyone challenging them for that division.
And well, that brings up the next question, which I guess you may have already answered, but is Miami possibly ready to challenge, at least give them a run for the money this year? Miami got a little bit of a roll last year and then, kind of tailed off towards the end of the season, but picked up Mike Wallace to give them a legit deep threat. They still got Brian Hartline. Unfortunately, Dustin Keller with that devastating knee injury. Otherwise, he was poised to be a big part of the offense. But what do you think? Tannehill in his second year here. Philbin another year as a head coach. How about the Dolphins? Is there a possibility?
I do. I think so. I think Tannehill can only improve, and like you said, they showed some nice flashes there. They lost some games last year thanks to Dan Carpenter's lack of kicking, and he's gone now. Reggie Bush is gone. Let's see who steps up to run the ball. But I do think, at the very least, they could be a wild card contender. They could surprise some teams. The defense is improving, and I know they gave Wallace a lot of money. Whether he steps up or not, I don't know. But you cannot. You basically can't double team anyone now because you've got to keep your eye on Wallace. So I think that'll benefit Tannehill. For me, the only downside to the Dolphins are their uniforms. I think they're atrocious for one of the long-time franchises in the NFL who had the same logo essentially for years, and they go to something like you and I talked about that looks like one of the USFL teams. I don't get it, but that's not going to stop me from picking them to be an improved team this year. But I do not think they will dethrone the Patriots. But you never know; they could beat them in a game down in South Florida. I would not be surprised.
Yeah, I'm not down with that new logo either. That's why the graphic I have up shows the helmet with the old logo on it. It's not because I made a mistake. I did that on purpose. I refuse to acknowledge the new Dolphins logo. I'm sorry, everybody, but I like the old one, and that's how I'm rolling for now. So let's go ahead and pick this division. You going to go Patriots or you want to lean Dolphins? I know you don't think that butt fumble Jets or the Buffalo Bills are going to win the division, right?
No, too many questions at quarterback. I mean, the Jets are an absolute mess. I mean, let's give Rex Ryan some more props. He couldn't even get to the regular season without screwing something up and putting Sanchez in a fourth quarter, an exhibition game against the Giants. He's hurt, and now they throw Geno Smith to the Wolves. They're a salary cap nightmare. He's basically going to be the number one coach on the hot seat. New GM in there. He's all but a goner, and this is one of the teams that will likely challenge for the top pick next year, the NFL draft. The Bills, if E.J. Manuel can stay healthy, good for them. Maybe he'll develop, but new coach up there, Marone, and not a heck of a lot else. I mean, I was reading today they may end up starting a quarterback who I think was 4-22 lifetime in his career at Washington State. I can't even remember the guy's name.
You're talking about Toole?
Yes.
Jeff
and,
Toole.
Matt Leinart got signed and then released shortly thereafter. Bills are years away too. That's another team that really you want to see turn it around, but it's not going to happen this year. So I'm going Patriots.
Yeah, and I think, like the Bills having the same problem as the Jets, having to deal with a Toole at quarterback, that can be really pretty tough. So
I think Ryan Seacrest was in the NFL, Charles. I had no idea.
All right, I got it. You know what? I'm going to go ahead and I'm leaning Dolphins here. I really want to go Dolphins. I'm going to go Dolphins with this division here. I think it's definitely a two-horse race this time, a legit two-horse race between the Patriots and the Dolphins, and I'm going to go ahead and lean Dolphins. I think the Patriots have lost a little bit too much there, and plus behind Vince Wilfork, I'm not comfortable with everyone they have on defense there in the Patriots defensive backfield. I know the Dolphins have some holes as well, but I think it's going to be an interesting division, and I'm going to take the Dolphins to win that probably by one game over the Patriots.
I like it. We differ on one division. That's good.
We had to. So let's go ahead and just grab a couple of these games real quick for this first weekend coming up. Of course, the big Thursday night contest would be the playoff rematch. The Baltimore Ravens, who have, I guess the NFL hung pictures of Joe Flacco all over Denver in honor of the opening game and basically pissed off the entire community. So the Ravens in Denver to play the Broncos. How do you see that one?
I think the Broncos win. I thought that even before they hung the billboards, and ingenious move, NFL, way to get the fan base inspired. The Ravens shouldn't even be playing in Denver. There was a whole controversy about how the Orioles wouldn't give up a home game, and their stadiums are adjacent to each other, so they had their first Super Bowl champion to defend their title on the road on Thursday night. So
right.
I don't think that's good for morale either. I think the Broncos are going to want revenge. And one more thing people aren't talking about, I think Peyton Manning's with a year under his belt and another year of not hurting his neck. They get stronger, and I think he's got a lot to prove. I'm going Broncos.
Well, this is good. This is good because in this game, I think that when I look at the way that playoff game went, and I know all the energy of the crowd is going to create some synergy with that Broncos team, and Mile High Stadium is notorious for it. But the Ravens, going back there to Denver, I mean, the defending Super Bowl champs, we know this is a national broadcast and everything. They're going to be up for it. I look at that, the Broncos defense, and they had enough trouble when they had Miller and Doomerville. Now they don't have those guys, either one of them. I don't think they'll be able to get the pressure they need on Flacco. Also, Dan Copen is injured, who was the center for Peyton Manning all last year. Now they're going to have to deal with Haloti Ngata up front, and somebody's going to have to stop him. So I like the Ravens in this game. In fact, I like them to win. I'd say they could win this game by 7 points. I like the Ravens to win this opening contest.
I like it. First game in of the 2013 season, and we disagree. That bodes well. One of us is going to win this year, huh?
Yeah, you know what? I'm really not comfortable with how you beat me last year. I mean, I think you beat me by, 1 or 2 games, went over the whole course of everything. That was really tough as Apollo Creed said, that's hard for a man of my intelligence to take.
Well, you're gonna be with the Broncos. You're gonna want revenge.
All right, so you got Broncos, I got Ravens. How about Tennessee and Pittsburgh?
I'm going Steelers. It's in Pittsburgh. Like I said, I think they got a lot to prove. I think Tomlin's not going to let them fall again. And other than Mr. Johnson, I'm a notorious skeptic of. I really don't see a lot of offensive firepower from the Titans here in the preseason. So I will pick the Steelers in this one.
Okay, and then one last AFC contest: New England at Buffalo. Any surprises?
Unless there's a snowstorm that rolls in down from Canada here in the first week of September, I'm going Patriots. Even with a snowstorm, I think they'll win.
Yeah, and even in the snow, the Patriots are a pretty darn good football team in inclement weather.
Yeah, I just figured maybe it's something blown in early Saturday or Sunday morning, and Belichick couldn't change the weather pattern in his kind of nutty professor way. Yeah, I really don't see the Bills putting up a fight with Toole at quarterback, even if E.J. Manuel was starting. And Brady could probably put me at tight end and have a decent game. I haven't played it years myself, but I really don't see a way the Bills win this game.
Yeah, so we're in agreement on those 2 games, and then we just differ on Baltimore and Denver. So it's about time to go ahead and get on out of here. So you can follow Chris Lardieri on Twitter at Chris L Sports. Follow myself on Twitter at The Inside Sports. So, Chris, before we go, any final words?
I'm looking forward to a great season, which is going to culminate in our first cold Super Bowl. The Farmer's Almanac said it's supposed to be cold and windy and possibly snowy in the Meadowlands. First week of February 2014. And I will say this. I know we're hitting the NFC tomorrow. I think the streak will continue, and the teams in this case that play in the home stadium will not be winning the Super Bowl this year. So I think it's wide open this year. We kind of think a lot of the same teams will contend in the AFC. I don't know if that's necessarily the case in the NFC, but you've got at least 12 to 14 teams that have a legitimate case to say they can contend, and the AFC is definitely wide open.
All right, fantastic. So it has been a most terrific 2013 AFC preview show. All right, Chris, so thanks for joining me, and everybody, thanks for watching. This is, of course, an Inside Sports production of Football Talk. I'm Charles E. Smith, Jr., and we'll see you on a weekly basis here every week throughout the 2013 NFL season. Thanks for joining us.